I first met Deb way, way back in the mid 1990s. And at that time, she was a vice president at Shedd Aquarium, and she was in charge of all of their marketing and their communication side. So she started off then, and she actually came over with a group of people from Shedd Aquarium and other aquariums together with several other people, and they had a function at the aquarium, and that was the old Sea World in those days. So we put out all of our beautiful tables, and we had a wonderful dinner in the aquarium foyer area of the old Sea World, and that was the first time that we met. And that was when our friendship started, and we've stayed friends ever since then. She remained at Shedd Aquarium for many, many years. She was instrumental with the American Zoo and Aquarium Association, and she was in charge of many of the education programs for the AZA. She was on the education board, executive committee, I don't know what it's called, and that every year ran Zoo School. Zoo School was run in a very small place in the middle of America called the zoo there was the Good Zoo. It was a freezing cold place, but every year they ran Zoo School. So they got people from all over America would go there, and there was the conservation education training course that was a week-long course. There was a leadership and management training course. There would be a welfare course, etc. So people came together from zoos and aquariums around the states for a week of intensive training. And I was lucky enough to do the conservation education training course with them. And some of the communication, effective communication and education work that I do now in training people still comes from that training course. It was a very good course. So we've stayed in contact all through the years, obviously bumped into each other at many conferences. She's come over and spent time with us exploring our KZN, and I've spent time with her in the States. I was in America when 9/11 happened and all the planes were grounded. So I said, Deb, can I come and stay with you? So stayed with her for about a week in Chicago, where Shedd Aquarium is, until we could all fly out again. And after a long time in the zoo and aquarium world at pretty high leadership positions, she moved over to the museum, the art museum where she is now. And she's basically turned this pretty nondescript art museum into something that's really quite unique. Very, very niche art museum, but something that's really special and well respected in Chicago. So that's just a very quick summary of Deb, and just to give you a bit of an introduction to her. I'm not sure how that fits, Heidi, with what you were going to say, but that's just my personal introduction to Deb. She's a wonderful person. She's very, very creative, got lots of ideas, lots and lots of energy, and just an all-round good person who's got a lot of experience across multiple fields, aquariums, marketing, and then obviously the museum and the art side. So yeah, a great person. So yeah, if there are any messages, she'll be with us in about 2 minutes, she says.
Thanks, Judy. Yeah, I don't know if I can actually add to that because mine was just going to be a very basic intro as to who she is, where she comes from, but everyone's already read it in the email that I sent around. Um, just saying the main thing is that her passion is for the role museums can play in social good and increasing museum relevance through programming focused on bringing the traditionally overlooked into community. So I thought that was quite a nice sort of introduction as to who she is. And when I asked her actually to come talk to us, she said, "For Judy, I'll do anything." So I thought, well, there we go. Perfect. We've definitely got ourselves a speaker.
Oh, that's great. Great. There we go. There's Deb.
All right, y'all caught me. I'm so sorry. I'm so
Not a problem.
sorry.
Thanks for joining us, Deb. So sorry it's so early in the morning. The time
Yeah,
differences are always a bit of a pain.
yep, yep, yep. Okay.
It's caught me a few times. So, Deb, I've given them an introduction going way back to when we first met at SeaWorld, and you brought your group from Shed and Joyce, and we all had dinner in the aquarium.
Yep. I had a yes.
way back to then. So we've done a
Way
quick
back to then.
introduction. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, I am ready to go. My slides are all ready to go, and I'm just queuing everything up here.
Can't believe you can look so good at 7 o'clock in the morning. I never look that good at 7 o'clock in the morning.
Well, 5 minutes ago I was in bed, so this is something of a miracle on my end too.
Well done. Seriously impressed. Thank you so much.
All right, let's do this. All right, sharing my screen. All right, okay. All right, I have along the way, obviously, um, please jump in with questions. All right, there's video pan, and I can see you in my slides. Okay. All right, so, all right. Here's the museum, and it's a very unconventional museum. We're in a space, we're in these two buildings on Milwaukee Avenue in Chicago. We're about two subway stops from the main part of downtown. And it's going to be important in a second when I talk about these two buildings. But this building on the right, you can't quite see it here, but on this one of these lentils in the on the second floor, I think it says 1874, and this building on the left says 1875. For us in the United States, that's super old. So that's going to be really important when I talk about this building. So here we go. Let's see, on to the next slide. So here we are. Here's the building before we did the renovation. And it was actually people would stand in this vestibule and they couldn't figure out how to get in the building. They would literally stand in this vestibule and call me and say, how do we get in? So there were a lot of needs. So we renovated. One of the main reasons is we were inaccessible. Someone in a full-size motorized wheelchair could not get in the building, literally, because of this weird. We could put a ramp out front, but there's a little box here, and they couldn't make their wheelchairs turn. We were basically existing on the first floor. We bought the second floor in um, uh, 2017, but we couldn't operationalize it because because we didn't have a passenger elevator. And we actually don't even own the third floor to this day. There are residents living on the third floor. So we own the first and second floors of this building. Just to zip through a couple of slides so you can see it doesn't look bad at all. Um, but there were a lot of things that would go wrong with the building. We didn't have good air conditioning to care for the art or for the people. Um, okay, this is our old, what we used to call the performance space. I'll talk about that again in a minute. Not a very functional space, not a very attractive space. Um, and things would break down every day. It seemed like something was breaking down in this old building. And I'm showing this slide because in 2021, we um, we hired some help to do some not exactly visitor studies. What we were doing here was talking to our community. We worked with a consultant and we interviewed about 200 people on Zoom and in person. You can see we interviewed a whole range of different kinds of people, and we talked to them about what the museum should be in the future. Um, we asked them what their expectations were. We asked them about their impressions about what the museum had been, if they knew about the museum in some cases, because we did talk to some community leaders. I can see I've got some funders up here, board members. There was a whole range of different kinds of folks that we talked to. And we even included some of our teacher fellows. So we work every year with 20 to 24 teachers. Good, I saw Heidi blink. I'm not frozen, am I? Okay. Um, 20 to 24 teachers in a professional development program where we work with them to um, help them get their continuing education credits that they're required to have. We give them a $500 stipend, and we work with them to develop a curriculum that they can put in their classroom. They don't have to be art teachers, they can be any sort of teacher. And I love to tell this story. One of the teachers said to us a few years ago, I used to think my job was helping students learn to make art, and now I see my job as helping kids feel successful. So we help the kids see that they don't have to be great artists, that they just need to get creative with whatever's to hand. They don't even need formal art supplies of any kind, that they can get creative with whatever's in their home or around them. So we talked to some of our teachers. We talked to some of the teens in our summer Intuit Teens Mentor program. And our consultants came back with some um, uh, word maps. And here's some of the things that they heard say about us. And that's the reason why I mentioned that we're on Milwaukee Avenue, because one of the things that came back was create a mothership on Milwaukee, so that not only were we in our headquarters at the physical museum, but that we're out in the community. And one of the things that's popping up here is the thing at the bottom of the page. This is really sort of my vision. My personal mission in life is to broaden how museums are experienced. And I really believe that museums should be more engaged in social justice and social good. Judy's heard me talk about this. And when I first started talking about this 20 years ago, people were shaking their heads saying museums have to stay neutral. Now, here in the United States, that has greatly changed. People in museums are really embracing museums as places of safety these days, security, um, social change, community engagement, and a place where everyone is welcome. And that's really my number one mission and vision, is that it's the most welcoming museum in Chicago, if not the country. And I'll just briefly acknowledge here that I think some of us here don't even recognize the country we're living in. And I don't know if everyone knows a little bit about Chicago, but we are a very liberal city. We see ourselves as a safe haven city, and so we have been targeted by the administration and what's going on in our country. And we have actually done training for our staff on what to do, how to be a safe and welcoming space, and what to do if troops show up at our door. Can't even believe I'm having that conversation. Okay. One of the things that we really struggled with, our old name was Intuit, the Center for Intuitive and Outsider Art. Talk about the rebrand in a second, but the term outsider art, which is a term of the art, um, has been controversial. So that was one of the things I really wanted to tackle in this um, in this um, uh, gathering of information and opinions, because I was hearing from artists, from our younger audiences, from some of our board members, we've got to change the name. And at the same time, I was hearing from other board members and people in the community, no, 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 you've got to keep outsider. You got to keep outsider art. So um, uh, that was a really important element, that we tackle that issue. They didn't want the museum design to be too polished. They wanted to keep the sort of raw nature of the art. And Judy, I hope you talked about outside art just for a second. Um, all right. So, like all museums, we're made of stories. We wanted the exterior and the street presence to fit with who we were. And then the consultants we were working with, this is sort of their final slide, connecting to neighborhoods and around the world, being a visible, resilient epicenter for art. And in case we didn't really talk about this, all of the art that we show in the museum is by people who are self-taught, people who didn't go to art school because of social or economic or geographic factors, oftentimes faced a barrier, usually that happens to be money, usually faced a barrier for going to art school or didn't know about art school. So this is one of the elements that the consultants at the time created. And one of the things they talked about was creating a front porch, a not a physical front porch, but the kind of front porch that people used to have with their neighbors, where you could come and chat with each other. So how do we create a space for community? So those are some of the things that happened several years ago. And then weirdly, COVID became one of the things that really helped the museum because at that time, the Biden administration made lots of funds available to the cultural sector. And Chicago was one of the cities after New York that got the most American Rescue Plan funds. So we got funds to bring the city back to life after COVID. And Intuit was lucky, not lucky enough, and we worked really hard for it. We got a $5 million grant from the city of Chicago at the time. So we leveraged that for donor funds and we began the construction on our building. So now we're in 2023. We're going to close the building. And um, here are four things that I discussed with our architect. I wanted it to be a really accessible and welcoming space. We needed to design flexibility into the space because I'm not going to be the president forever. Let's make sure that future generations are going to be able to do different things with this space. Um, Durability is almost a way to say professionalism. Let's bring in the kinds of HVAC, the air conditioning and air handling, temperature and humidity control that we need to care for the art. And let's do this all as economically as possible. Um, Quickly, this is a really poor drawing, but this is all we had before. Down here in the front bottom left, this was our first gallery, our main gallery. There was a little store in the back, and best practice, put people through the store coming and going. And we had a little gallery back here. We had a little bathroom in the very back. We had a study center, and then our Henry Darger room was in the top right here, this tiny little space. And then this space in the top was that big performance space. So first thing we did with our construction people is they started tearing down the drywall. And one of the first things they found in the front gallery was, oh my goodness, there used to be a staircase here 150 years ago. And when people before us repaired the ceiling where that staircase went up to the second floor, they did a terrible job. And that staircase, that place where the opening was, is about to fall in. So first thing they did was prop up the ceiling and then fix it because we're just lucky we didn't have a bathtub or a piano sitting on the second floor in that spot. And then down in the basement, we dug the basement out completely. We dug down because we're going to put an passenger elevator in. So we dug down this yucky pit here is where the elevator is going to go. And we actually dug down below the concrete into the dirt, hauled dirt out of here, found beer bottles from the 1900 from like 1910. Um, and then we took all the drywall off down there in the basement. And here's one of the things that the workers found. I threw this in for a chuckle. Here are the scary beams and on the wall, they found this little Santa doll tucked into the brick. So we left him there. He's still there. He's covered by a piece of plexiglass, and we left Santa there. But he was very creepy. He's got kind of a scary face, and where his flannel is coming off here, you can see he was made out of straw. My husband, who was my project manager, did a little research. He's I'm almost sneezing looking at that dust. He's a 1950s made in Japan dime store doll, what we would call a dime store doll. All right. Okay. So we were closed for 20 months. It was supposed to take, initially, it was supposed to take $7 million. And then our revised budget was 9 million. And then it ended up costing 11 million. And honestly, I'll be frank, we're still paying for that. One of the things that we made sure we did was an opening celebration. I don't know if you do this in South Africa. There's a tradition here that when you open something new, you cut a ribbon. Well, we weren't opening something brand new. So we brought in pieces of ribbon and we had people at the opening ceremony tie the ribbon together. So they turned to the person next to them, whether they knew them or not, and they tied ribbons together. So we didn't do a ribbon cutting, we did a ribbon tying. And actually, Block Club, which is a neighborhood, Chicago neighborhood newspaper virtual newspaper that reports on happenings, chose this as their photo of the week, the ceremony to open the museum. And we've got our alderman, our a city council person standing next to me, a board chair, then the person from the Department of Planning, one of the curators, two of our artists on the far left, self-taught artists are there. And I'll show you a few shots of the building. Here is the revised space. Here's the first gallery. Here's the front gallery. Now, I think I forgot to throw in the map of the space now. So this is the first floor, but this is not the first space you walk into. The first space you walk into is the store. This is the second space. And then we finally have a space dedicated to our collection. So we can always be showing works in our permanent collection. Before, we were always showing special exhibitions and we couldn't keep our collection on view. And we have a very accessible, easy to walk staircase up to the second floor. We do have a passenger elevator. You can see some names on the stairs. This is an opportunity for fundraising to put people's names on the stairs. There, we're looking back at the store. Here are images of the second floor. The second floor is all exhibition space. And the first exhibition we opened with was Catalyst Immigration and Self-Taught Art in Chicago. And we are celebrating the contributions of migrants and immigrants to the cultural fabric of our city. So all of the artists here either migrated during the Great Migration or immigrated from Europe, Africa, Caribbean, Asia. So they were all South America. They were all immigrants. This is our new learning studio. So in the back where we used to have our back gallery, this is our learning studio. This is where we do our teacher and teen events. We have our teacher fellows. At the end of the school year, they do a show. We displayed the art from the teacher fellow classrooms as an additional exhibition and invited our public in to see it. And what you see at the top is our new office mezzanine. So our offices are in an open plan in that space. Up in the front is our Henry Darger exhibition. Henry Darger is across the world the most famous self-taught artist, and he was from Chicago, and we have his room recreated at the museum, and that was a tiny little exhibit before. Now we have a whole room where we can display his art and always be showing different elements of his art. But downstairs in the basement, remember that scary photo of the basement? Well, here we are. Now we're in the brand new basement, and here's his room recreated. And we have some, everything in the room is original, but on the right-hand side, you see a photograph of that wall of the room. Behind us is another photograph of that wall of the room. And then in the windows, we have some animations by an artist, composer actually, in Paris who did music videos. And we have some elements of those music videos, some animations from the music videos. We're not listening to the music. We actually hear typewriter sounds and elements of the animations. And there's his room recreated. There's the beautiful store. So you walk through the store through an accessible ramp into the space. What used to be what I called our performance space is now our Clio space, our Center for Learning and Engagement Opportunities, named after one of our founders, Cleo Wilson. We fundraised for this space in her honor. We left this raw space. When we took off the drywall, we left the raw space wherever it was, paying homage to this 150-year-old building. You can see where there was a staircase over in the corner. We left all that raw, and then we put art hanging walls in front of it, as you saw throughout the space. And the architecture critic for the Chicago Tribune loves it. He came in and wrote a glowing story about how we handled the architecture. So both paying tribute to the 150-year-old building and paying tribute to the art through an art hanging wall. And on the left-hand side of this room, you can see people are here at Art After Work, which happens every third Thursday. On the back wall is an interactive piece. One of the immigrant artists created this piece, and it doesn't look very full there, but that piece of art, which is on one of our art hanging walls, people are invited to contribute to that art hanging wall. And now it is covered in contributions of more than 500 of our guests have added little tags to the wall where they could draw, write a phrase, talk about their their wishes and dreams, their frustrations and goals. And I love that we've had so many people add their piece to that wall. And so does Pooja, the artist, originally from India. All right. We changed the name. We changed the branding. How did that happen? This is where we used to be. There's that doorway where you couldn't find your way in, weirdly. Um, Here's our old brand. I went to the branding agency that we hired. They did an amazing job. We're still working with them. And I said, we need four things. First of all, this name needs to be shorter because I have to write it down every time I fill out a form with the city of Chicago. So it needs to be shorter. We're not here in Chicago. Center is a place. It's not universal, but here it pretty much connotes a place where you're going to go make art first and exhibit art second. We're a museum. We exhibit art first and make art as a programming opportunity to support the museum. So let's get museum in the name and dump center. Outsider art it's a term of the art, but it's going by the wayside. People don't like it. Artists don't like it. Our younger audiences don't like it. Our older audiences of color don't like it. It's just a few of our old, honestly, a few of our old white guys that still like this term. And most museums have dropped it. Most gallerists have dropped it. Um, and the original term was a French term, art brut, but that also is a strange term in the United States for people who speak English. So what do we use? There is no perfect term, but what do we use instead? And then do we still keep Intuit? There's a giant software company here, Intuit. They make tax software and they make other kinds of software. And we get this time of year, it's tax time here in the United States, and we get phone calls for them all the time. So do we keep this term or not? Um, our branding agency did they did their own set of interviews. They used all of that information from the interviews we that were done back in 2020 and 2021, but they did some more interviews, not with a huge group, but with about 20 folks. Um, Everyone they talked to loved the museum. Um, some of the things that they said that I think really resonate with the vision of me and the staff, not intimidating like other museums, welcoming. That's one of the things that I'm really support, not just art, but the artist's life story. So they got it. But what else? Outsider artist is a term I don't love. I like intuitive more. Um, let's see. Self-taught works. And then the branding agency came back with this brand strategy pyramid. Who are we? Um, what's our who, our what, our why, our how? And then they came back to us with our brand essence. They do try to do this in just 2 or 3 words. And they said that our brand essence was serendipitous connection. You come into the museum and you make a connection with something that is unexpected. And we really loved that. And we really we and the staff and our branding committee really loved that. And here's what we ended up with. The branding agency said it should feel like exactly the right thing. It shouldn't feel like it was hard to get there, but let me tell you, it was hard to get there. We looked at like 100 names and a bunch of different designs, but but some of them are too kitschy, too crafty, and not sophisticated enough. This one looks very elegant, but then there's this thing with the letter forms that I really liked, where those letter forms snag your brain a little bit. So I thought this was really nice. The way that the U and the M, the U and the I, a little bit less so with the R and T, but the way that those letter forms, they snag your attention. It's not exactly what you were expecting, right? It's unexpected. And then they looked to our art to come up with a color scheme. And this is our main color scheme. And I just thought I would wear brand colors today, so I threw my blue sweater on for our brand colors today. And we also added a pop of orange at one point. So these are our new colors. Can be used in different ways. And then let me go. I'm going to stop sharing for a second so I can enable sharing with sound and video because I have a little video that our Am I sharing the video? Did I pick the right one? I'm not sure I picked the right one. Let's go back and share again. Make sure I'm sharing the correct screen. Here we go. We have a little video that the agent made for us. Okay. So we ended up with this version that has the words underneath for those who couldn't live without the words, but we don't use that very much. And one of the things that we always did in the old days, whoops, one of the things we always did in the old days was we always joked around I am into it. And now I am is actually our acronym, which works out so nicely. All right, I've lost you guys. I can't see you anymore. Let me show the video panel. Here we go. Here's our stationery, and then they created a bunch of collateral, including an ad campaign. This takes a little bit of context, but the two largest, I mean,
Sorry to
Chicago,
interrupt. There seems to be a black square in front of your slide.
that's you guys. So I'm going to move you over. Okay, thank you, thank you.
Thanks.
This requires a little bit of context. The main fancy street down Chicago is Michigan Avenue because it's facing Lake Michigan. And Chicago has probably 20 art museums in it. And the two big ones are the Art Institute of Chicago, the second largest art museum in the country, and the Museum of Contemporary Art, which is a smaller museum. But so we have these two main, sort of like in New York, they've got the Met and MoMA. We've got the Art Institute and the MCA, and they're both on Michigan Avenue. So that's what this is about. We're not a Michigan Avenue kind of museum, because we're over on Milwaukee Avenue. All right. And there's a piece of art from that same artist who did that interactive piece. And that piece actually just left us to go to India to a museum in New Delhi. And Pooja is thrilled that a piece of her art is going back to her home country to be in a museum in her home country. This is an ad that goes on the subway car in the what we call the L, the elevated or subway car. I am on the go, and you can scan this and look at stuff from the museum. Scan that QR code. This is a different part of the inside of the train that this goes in. This is at the L stop at the subway stop. All right, and then I threw in one more fun. As I was looking through my pictures to find all the right slides, I found that. Okay. All righty. Okay. Right. All right. So I know that the rebranding looked easy. It was really hard. There was a lot of push and pull along the way, but I am blessed to have someone from my old institution, the senior director of design at Shedd Aquarium, is on my board, and she was the chair of the branding and marketing committee, and she stood up at every board meeting and defended our decisions, and she came to every meeting that we had with our branding agency. I'm so grateful for that. We couldn't have done it without her. And then I didn't mention that we do visitor studies. We do exit surveys of our visitors. And when we first opened the museum, we had our volunteers and our frontline staff do timing and tracking studies to see how our visitors were using the space. And they were using it pretty much as we'd hoped. We learned at the top of the stairs, we had a didactic label right there at the top of the stairs, and a piece of art, sorry, the didactic we moved over, thank God. And we now know we can't put anything at the top of the stairs there, not surprisingly. It's too scary of a place for people to stand because there's a staircase right behind them. So we're already planning on what do we do with that space next time, because we're getting ready to turn the exhibition over. So there we are. I
Wow.
do. I don't even know what time it is because, yep. Oh, I did
Thanks,
pretty
Deb.
well. I
You
zipped
did.
through that pretty quick. Yeah.
No, you
Okay.
did well. You did really well. I mean, especially seeing as we were sitting just for a few minutes at the beginning, we've actually done really well for time. And I'm so
Okay.
glad you've mentioned branding actually, because VISSA is actually busy going through a rebranding process, or we've actually just been sitting through meetings of rebranding. So it's quite interesting to go and see what you've been up to and what you've come up with. Um, our new colors are actually also in the same sort of spectrum, weirdly enough. What I would like to ask is, see, well, let me start with first, you were in an aquarium and then you moved to an art museum. Why the change? How the change? What is the connection there?
Sure. Sure. I mean, it's really clear to me, but it's a great question. Um, Anyone who knew me at the aquarium would not be the least bit surprised that I ended up in an art museum. I've always been an art geek. I love art museums. Um, it was a natural place for me to go, but there is a really clear through line for me. Um, One of the things that I was a generalist. I was always sort of brought in to troubleshoot different areas at the aquarium, and one of my last jobs there was overseeing sort of our external conservation messaging, where we were taking out messages to the public, to our audiences about the need to care for the natural world, how they could take steps. We're sitting right on Lake Michigan, one of the five Great Lakes, which is 20% of the entire world's freshwater supply. So, a really important natural resource that does face various threats from uh, pipelines to farm runoff, stuff like that, invasive species. And so, one of the things that I was really passionate about is how we engage audiences, how we engage community with the museum and making change in our communities. Um, when I first came to Intuit, I was hired as a consultant. I've always been incredibly passionate about teenagers because they are in a position to activate themselves as they take on sophisticated adult topics and begin to think about how they are going to impact the world. How are they going to make change in the world? So I've always there's that through line is partly about teenagers in a space where they're about to embrace the values that they're going to have through the rest of their lives. And Intuit, I was doing consulting after I left Shedd Aquarium, and I started an organization called Youth Muse, where I was working with teens, primarily at zoos, aquariums, and gardens, to activate teens that were in museum programs already to help them start online social change campaigns connected to the mission of the museum they were working at. And this was in 2010. When I said create online social change campaigns, no one knew what the heck I was talking about. Now we all know what that is. But back then, no one knew. And Intuit actually hired me to start a teen program that would connect with social change. And the head of education at the time said, "Wow, Deb, you should really be our museum director." And I was like, "Why? I came from this giant aquarium where I was the executive vice president, and here's this tiny little museum on one floor with a $500,000 budget and no staff." And I was like, "Oh, I'm not coming, I'm thinking, I'm not coming here to be their museum director." And then I took my husband over. I said, "You guys see this museum? All the art is made by people who are are self-taught, couldn't go to art school, living with mental illness or physical disabilities or homelessness or poverty or um, prejudice or abuse and violence, really poor domestic situations in many circumstances." And he came in, I was showing them the museum. He goes, "You really need to be the director here." And I'm like, still thinking, I'm not going to be the director here. And a month later, they fired their director and they called me and they said, "We should have you come in and be the director." So it's really been um, it's been a huge labor of love. It's my legacy project. I'm, I'm paid very little and I'm one of the largest donors. So frankly, the fact that I did a big chunk of my career was behind me so that I was in the circumstances where I could come in and really embrace this and have it be my passion project, if that makes sense.
It totally makes sense. And I also know a lot of people who are in the biological fields who have a creative side as well. So I think the two actually go very well together.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And we just had I just had a Shedd reunion uh in right before Christmas. I invited a bunch of former Shedd people. There's a fun picture of a whole bunch of people standing in front of Pooja's artwork. All of us, from marine mammal trainers to educators to plumbers to fundraisers to the CFO, the old CFO. We all came together from all different levels of the organization. Group tour operator guy, all came over and celebrated together. So yeah, we're still a pretty tight-knit group, the aquarium folks.
Oh, that's brilliant. I would still like to ask one or two questions, but let's open it up to the floor first and see if there's someone who would like to. Judy, are you itching for a question? Have you got one there?
Deb, thank you so much. What a lovely presentation and a really good opportunity to see how passion can turn something around. We're busy putting together a book on interpretation in zoos and aquariums and museums and botanical gardens. And one of the things that's coming through is museums' reputation as exclusive places, as places that are not welcoming, places that are for them. And there's a lot of us and them in museum kind of literature. How have you bridged that? Because you've got a very unique museum and you're attracting a different audience. And you're trying to, your art on Thursdays after work sounds like a great initiative. But how are you actively making the museum accessible to people who traditionally haven't been museum goers and who
Oh,
often feel excluded?
absolutely. And one of the reasons the museum wasn't named museum in the first place is because our founders saw this as sort of the anti-museum. But I am really passionate about making museums welcoming places. So, and Judy, you pinged for me in my head. Our two target audiences are people 15 to 42 and people of color. That does not our mission is we champion the diverse artistic pathways of self-taught artists, welcoming both new and
Sorry, Deb.
targeting.
Oh, there we go.
Okay.
You're back.
No, okay. We're targeting people of color and people 15 to 42. First of all, one of the things I talk about is just the building itself. We opened up the front, so physically we made it welcoming. There's glass in the front. There's the store in the front. Let me just share this photo real quick because I think that makes me feel like I'm sharing my story a little bit. Not that one, this one. Next slide. There we go. And so it looks very appealing in front. The front of the building looks appealing. But more than that, we are free to anyone 24 and younger. We do not have a senior discount rate. If anyone comes in the door and says, I can't pay or that's too much, we say, no problem, welcome in. We are free to a number of different audiences, people with disabilities, teachers, um, uh, firefighters, police officers. We've taken down our sign in front that we're free for active duty military. We've taken that sign down. But we also are part of it is the experience. You come in. We just had a visitor leave a comment. So we have a place where visitors can take a survey and leave a comment. And we just heard, oh, I feel like I belong here. One of the things I say to our team and our audiences is if someone comes in the door and they don't come from a museum going culture, they've never been to a museum before, I want this to be their first museum so that they feel like museums can be for them. Um, we do this with our signage and our language. Our labels are really important, and I actually edit every single label, everything that goes out. I know that's shouldn't be my job, but you'll never see the word autodidact, for instance. You only see self-taught. All of our labels are written in eighth grade language. Our curator is all on board with our labels are not written with curator speak, if you will. Our catalogs are not written that way. One of the things about this art is that um, it was it was really embraced as a legitimate art form in Europe by Jean Dubuffet in sort of the mid-century, and he came here. We had people here in Chicago that were really embracing this art and looking for artists, but a lot of those early collectors of this work were white, and a lot of the artists were black or brown, and the stories that the collectors told not intentionally, but they told those stories through a white savior lens, right? Forefronting themselves and their role in lifting up this artist. A lot of the gallerists that were collecting and selling this sensationalized the stories of the artists. So sensationalized their circumstances or their illness or speculated on their illness, told stories. So we are trying to walk all of that back so that we are talking about the artists from the perspective of their communities. We're not even calling them overlooked because they may not have been overlooked in their communities. Everyone in their community might have known that Sam Doyle was painting these paintings on big pieces of plywood and sheet metal and hanging them up in his yard. I'm sure all of his neighbors knew that he was doing this, but he was underrepresented in mainstream museums. That's how we're talking about it. So when we write a label, we look to what did that artist say about his work? What did his family say about her work? What what did what did the community say if they're no longer with us? And if they are with us, what are they saying about their work now? So we're trying to tell the stories about their lives in very factual ways about their communities, especially with this immigration exhibit. It's been really easy to say, here's where this artist came from. Here's the exposure he had to something like maybe this artist, one of the artists that we have exhibited right now did exhibit at the Art Institute of Chicago in what they called the Chicago show back then, where they solicited artists to submit for the show. So um, we are dedicated to making sure that our labels, our writing is at the eighth grade level, that we are telling valuable stories. Our labels are still too long, Judy, they're still too long, but they may be a little story that I'm thinking about an artist that we have right now, Jenya Saporin's granddaughters told us a story. So that's the label, what the granddaughter said about the work. Judge Marion Perkins came in and her grandfather was an artist. And we have what the judge says about her grandfather's artwork. So those are the kinds of labels that we're writing so that we're trying to be as accessible as possible. We're trying to make our ads as interesting as possible. I mean, some of the ads I showed you, some of that art is not what you would expect to see in the Art Institute. So we're trying as much as possible to make it easy for people to find us. We're in a great location. There are two bus lines that go right where we are, and there's um, a train line, a subway line that goes right where we are, and we're right off the expressway. We're in a very easy location to get to, even though we're not on the south or really the west side. We're close into the downtown, and we leverage that.
Thanks.
I'm really all about let's not be on our elitist pedestal. How do we break that down?
It sounds great. It really sounds like it's a lot more accessible and open to everyone and anyone. And you were talking about outsider art, outsider being a bad term or not a great term. And I suppose it's connected to the way it was used, but I've never heard of outsider art. And to me, it actually makes me fascinated. It makes me want to see it because the normal art museum doesn't normally attract me. So if I hear outsider art, I think, actually, I want to go there because it's different, it's new,
Right,
it's something no
right.
one else is doing. So in a way, that's not a negative term to me.
Yeah, absolutely. It's complicated. It's layered with complication. And that's why my board and I have been and our staff, we've been talking about this for 10 years. How do we and self-taught is not a perfect term either. Some people call it visionary art, but visionary art tends to mean that a higher power, either God or sometimes aliens or, someone else told you, some voice in your head told you to make the art. Um, uh, but outsider was intended to mean outside the mainstream. But if you're not an outsider, outsider seems cool. If you're on the outside of mainstream society and being called an outsider, that feels like you're being othered, right? You don't belong. You're not part of the thing. I have a I have a 75-year-old board member who is a white man who worked in the finance industry, and he goes, "Well, I'm an outsider. I um I came to art, loving art really late. I'm an outsider." And he actually has it on his license plate. And he was one of the biggest, you know, pushers about, no, no, we have to keep this term. And I'm like, Patrick, there is nothing about you in America that is outside. You are an Irish American white man with wealth. You are not outside anything.
I suppose he just needed the explanation as to what it actually.
No, he still sees himself as an outsider. That's fine. That's fine. I'm not,
Well,
I can't change someone's vision of themselves.
well, outsider, we'll rather take outsider as standing out and being unique rather than
Right.
being left out in the cold.
Yes. Yes.
Would anyone like to ask one last question? We have 1 minute, but seeing as we started a bit late, we can have a few extra minutes.
Yes. Thank you all. I'm sorry that Heidi and I we even went back and forth, and I looked it up at one point. Anyway.
It happens. These things always happen. Anyone else? No one else? Okay, well, in that case, thank you very much, Deb. I really, really appreciate
Oh,
it.
Judy's got her hand up
Oh,
again.
yeah.
Just one last question, sorry. The value of visitor research. How do you value visitor research and how does it help you? Because that's obviously something we like to do more of in VISSA.
Well, Judy, me being me and someone who really believes in data and research and you know, uh, I go to breakfast every third Friday with a bunch of visitor research people. So I'm really bought in. And frankly, I've had our team doing exit surveys for several years, and it's really given us a lot of good data. I usually have to get a volunteer to compile the data, and we've got a template for a slideshow. And we've worked a little bit also with Sarah Lee, who is a well-known visitor studies person based in Boston. Um, and she's helped us with our teacher surveys, and she's helped us with our visitor our exit survey. And honestly, it does a lot to confirm what we think, and we're getting all this feedback about how welcoming we are and how much people have appreciated experience and how much they've appreciated the stories of the artists. So we get a lot of reinforcing feedback, and we can use that in our grant applications. That's been a really important place for us to use that. We've learned some things too. We did some before we changed the museum. We in the back gallery we were doing timing and tracking to see how people use that space, and we found that if we put a didactic on the right as people walked in, they never looked at it. But if we put it on the left, everybody looked at it. But right now, it's the first time that we're not actively having somebody stand there with a clipboard and ask people to fill out the surveys. We're using an iPad right now, and I've told the team, look, that's only the people that are most interested in you or the people who've had a terrible experience are going to fill that out. And I've sort of been nudging the staff about, can we go back to asking them to fill it out so that we're more randomizing the collection of data. But there's just been a lot going on with learning how to use the new building. Um, but I will tell you that asking for those testimonials has been really big. I mean, it's been really valuable to our grant applications to being able to lift those testimonials. And, if we occasionally get something that's not quite so, I mean, gosh, I haven't seen anything. People are really loving the space and they're sitting in Clio. I tell people the Clio space when we're not doing art after work, when we're not doing a program in there, I tell people to think about it as a members lounge for everyone, right? We don't have a members lounge. We have a space for everyone where they can watch those music videos about Henry Darger. We watch, you can make, there are coloring book pages there. There are things to stop and do. There are books about the art that you can sit and read. Anytime I walk in there, there are always guests in there watching the videos or doing something. And I don't know how that kind of creating that opportunity, that all came from our earlier studies. We want more. That was one of the reasons we were able to justify asking for the money, is that we had about a 30-minute visit before, and our guests would all say to us, "Where's the rest of the museum? We want more." So we were able to take what we had gleaned from our guests before and say, "This is really needed by the community." We keeping this, making sure that we are carving out valuable space for a community hangout space has been really important.
It sounds so cool. Like
Thank
it's
you.
community center slash museum slash um, regenerating yourself, sort of having a
Yeah,
reflection
and a
area.
safe space right now. Honestly, folks, I just can't even believe that I'm living in the United States. This just feels like a really, really, really strange times. And we are really dedicated to creating a safe space. I tell every school group, every teenager that comes in, you are welcome here. Come back with your friends. Uh, Come in for free. Come on, you can come on the Blue Line or you can walk over. There's several schools right around us and come in and be here. You are welcome here. Because um, that's what museums can really be in this moment, is a safe space for our citizens who don't
That's
go
a
along
good
with
idea.
what's going on. Yep.
Such a good idea. Thank you so much, Deb. It's been an interesting session, really. It's just, I didn't know what to expect coming into it. And it's really been fascinating. And you've only got good stuff coming in through the chat. I don't know if you've read the chat.
Oh, I haven't. I'll take a look right now. Thanks. Thanks for calling it out, Heidi.
Because, yeah, there's just saying,
Thank you.
sharing this inspiring story. It's a great example of passion turned into action. Love the colorful mosaics, make it very welcoming, fascinating, insightful. It really, yeah. I think everybody's just thank you, thank you, thank you. And if you
I
want to
love
press
that.
your react button and send some hearts, let's send some lots of hearts in to show that how much we like the talk.
Thank
Everybody,
you.
one, two,
Thank
three,
you.
press your hearts.
Thank you, hearts. I love hearts. Hearts back to you all, and thank you for having me. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk about how we incorporated audience input into our building, our branding, our naming.
Thanks, Deb. That's brilliant. Let's hope everyone goes forward and does the same. Visitor research, here we come.
Yay!
Have a great
But
day, everybody. Thank you, Deb. Thank you, everyone, for spending
Thank
time with us.
you.
And
thank
hopefully,
you.
we'll see you at Judy's workshop next month, understanding the visitor experience using the Dove method. See you then. Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you. Bye.